Hey, it's Delisa, and I'm going to do a vocal analysis today on Miss Toni Braxton. I actually thought I did this a long time ago, but I guess I didn't because y'all kept asking. So, Miss Toni Braxton, obviously we know she's like legendary at this point, and I would say that she's a mezzo-soprano. Her range is from an A2 to a G6, legitimately. Um, Her technique is actually a mixed technique. It really depends on um, what part of her range that she's in. When she sings lower, she's able to manipulate her voice to have that dark, depressed tongue. That she creates a dark sound by depressing her tongue and a high soft palate. So it's like, first thing in the morning, I'm gonna pick my tears away. You know? That's just like too much spaces in her mouth. I put on there, it's a depressed tongue and a high soft palate like you're about to throw up. That was my analogy. Uh, Lightly compressed vocal cords with good support and weak. Did I mean to say weak intonation? I probably meant to say weak. What is that word? Pronunciation, enunciation. So lightly compressed vocal cords. She's a really good singer. She has a lot of support. What she does to create that feeling of, she's just not, she's compressing her vocal cords just to the point that she's making a clear sound, but it still sounds painful or weak. But it's a very controlled sound. It's not that she actually doesn't have good technique or good support or she doesn't actually have any raspiness in her voice. She's creating that sound by just, So anyway, I said it sounds like agony or whining. These are my notes, guys. So, like I said, just enough support for a little vibrato in and out of airiness, but just enough tone to sound supported. The second part of her technique is that as she enters into her middle register, her sound becomes more even, more feminine. Her vowels become more bright, better supported vocals, and her vocal cords are more compressed, and the tone more clear. I mean, these are just all the things that happen when you compress your vocal cords and support. So it's like she's actually singing. Take, for example, I mean, really, the middle to the end of pretty much any of her songs is when you start hearing her. There comes a time when we could all make a change. When she starts going up into her mid-register, you can hear how it just pops into place. And that's because that technique that she uses isn't really sustainable. That darker technique, it's not sustainable. So you kind of have to kind of flip your voice into place in order to continue to sing. So that's what she does. Also, she enunciates properly as the song gets higher. And she sings mostly in a light mixed belt. I think she has a super beautiful voice. And again, she's one of those singers that even though her voice is kind of set lower, obviously she has a lower tessitura than a lot of pop singers. That's what makes her unique. She's using very similar technique to the rest of pop singing, like I said, except in her lower register where she does that thing. That's not what most people do. But as she gets into her mid-register, I just feel like she's a really solid singer with solid technique. She sings with a high soft palate. She makes her voice bright. She knows how to enunciate. And she actually has an amazing range. And that's why I didn't call her a contralto. I feel like, a lot of people say, oh, she's an alto. Just for clarification, alto is a voice part, like in a choir, you sing soprano or alto or second soprano or first tenor, things like that. But the word alto doesn't actually describe a vocal flock. So when you look at an actual vocal flock, and if I had a choir, would she be singing alto? Yes, she would be singing in the alto section. But she's not actually a contralto. And when you hear a real contralto, you'll hear that it's very different from what Toni Braxton produces, because even though she has a richness to her tone, it's still quite light. And it's still quite feminine. And a true contralto, their voice kind of, it's a bit jarring. Like, it has so much power and so much presence. And I don't really see her voice. I will say, look at this in general, because some of you guys say, oh, she says everyone's a lyric soprano or a lyric mezzo. Well, that's because that's what pop music likes. And that's the way it's been for the last 50, 60 years. There's not a whole lot of variation in voice types because they want a youthful sound. They want an agile sound. They don't want a sound that sounds too mother-in-law-ish, that sounds too, I hate to say mother-in-law, but, you know, they don't want a sound that sounds too powerful, overbearing, jarring, because they're trying to sell fun, catchy music. And the voices that sell fun, catchy music are the voices that are lighter and more limber. So yes, that's why most people in commercial music are going to have lyric voices. They're not usually going to have these big voices, even though they may be big compared to a smaller voice. On the real scale of voices, they're not that big. And there's very few voices that are huge that actually make it into the pop arena. They usually end up being in more theater, things like that. So I hope that helped clarify. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. Rate, comment, subscribe. Of course, I'd love to hear your thoughts if I missed anything. And yeah, I'll talk to you guys soon. God bless. Bye.